A normal morning. Familiar words. But something about them feels off. One glance, one notification on a phone screen, and life begins to crack at the seams. Where there was once warmth, now there's a cold emptiness. Where love used to live, doubt casts its shadow. He didn't know exactly what had changed, but he felt it. The point of no return had been crossed. And as the truth began to surface, he realized, there's no going back. Only forward. Into a world where every smile might be a lie, every touch a calculated move. If she's playing a hidden game, he'll learn to play it better. Greetings, my dear viewer. Please, tell me which city and country you're watching this video from. Maybe you're watching me from a small town or a gigantic metropolis. Write about it. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends. It will make me very happy. Let's get started. A full month had passed, precisely 30 days, since she'd last shown any real interest in studying alongside me. Honestly, the last 3 months had been rough, but this most recent stretch was especially hard. Something had changed. She wasn't behaving the way she usually did. Just last night, we ended up having a big argument. Dealing with her recent mood swings had left me feeling exhausted. Camilla was never one to let things go quickly. Her temper would flare up in an instant, and once she was angry, she'd stay upset for days. That was just her nature. Her maiden name was Camilla O'Shea, but since marrying me, she went by Camilla Morgan. She was always Camilla, never Katie, never Kate. Early in our relationship, I'd once called her Kat. That only happened once. I'm Caleb Morgan, her husband, and yes, I'm Irish too. We first crossed paths in high school and started seeing each other when we were both 16. Over the years, I learned the best approach when Camilla was in a bad mood was simply to give her space. That method had worked for the past 26 years, 22 of which we'd spent married. In spite of everything, my feelings for her had never faded. The fiery red of her hair, those sharp green eyes, the freckles dotting her face. I loved all of it. We shared all our firsts, first crush, first kiss, first real relationship. I still remember her saying, "I'm waiting until we're married." I respected that choice. This morning, as she had on countless occasions before, she said, "I like the way you do it." But something about those words struck me differently today. I got up, grabbed a towel, and told her, "I'm going to shower." If I didn't go right then, I'd end up waiting ages for my turn. As the hot water ran down my back, I kept replaying her words in my mind. She'd made that comment so many times before, so why did it feel strange now? Maybe it was the strain of the past few months. Normally, Camilla's dark moods might last a week or so, maybe stretch to 10 days, but never a whole month. I like the way you do it. Why did that line suddenly feel unsettling? I stepped out, wrapped myself in the towel, and headed back to our room. "Your turn, sleepyhead," I said. She groaned, stretched, and trudged to the bathroom. I thought back to the first year of our marriage, when we were practically inseparable, before work, after work, even during my lunch break. Back in those days, I was a mechanic, and she worked at Target. Money was tight, but we managed. I stayed at that job until I turned 28, when the owner of a Napa Auto Parts franchise gave me an offer. I was earning $4,000 a year fixing cars, but he saw potential in me. He wanted to open a third store and needed someone to manage it. One evening after work, he took me out for dinner. I assumed he wanted to offer me a better position, but instead, he outlined an even bigger plan. "Ever thought about running your own business?" he asked. Of course, I'd dreamed of that. Who hasn't? Long story short, he proposed I keep working for him at the same pay for 10 more years, and when that was up, he'd sell me the business. Each year, he'd put aside $2,000 for my future down payment and train me to take over. We shook on it right then. That handshake was enough for me. When I told Camilla, she was livid that I hadn't spoken to her first. To make matters worse, I had no contract. Just the man's word. "I've missed too much of the kids' lives already," I tried to explain. This job will give me a chance to be there. She didn't see it that way. I ended up banished to the couch for over a week. I genuinely worried I'd made a colossal mistake. 8 years later, I was ahead of schedule, but not getting any raises had started to cause problems at home. I kept telling Camilla, just trust me. But trust didn't come easy for her. The new job meant long and unpredictable hours, usually 9 to 7, sometimes even weekends. But it also meant I could go to our kids' games. For me, that was worth the sacrifice. But around 2 years ago, Camilla started changing. Her temper grew shorter. She made cutting remarks, and a quiet bitterness began to take root between us. The past 3 months had been the worst yet. I tried having real conversations with her. In the beginning, she'd say sorry and things would improve for a week, then we'd fall back into the same old pattern. Lately, if I brought up any problems, she'd just glare at me and completely shut down. Our home life suffered because of it. Work became my refuge. I found myself wanting to stay at the shop more than come home. On the upside, business was booming. We'd expanded to 4 locations, and our commercial sales had never been better. Camilla was still working too. She managed an insurance office and was, by all accounts, excellent at it. I kept thinking maybe job stress was behind her behavior. Again and again, I asked, "What's going on? What's different?" She never gave me an answer. If I pressed her, she'd just snap at me. That morning, as I got dressed, I glanced out the window at the brilliant blue sky and sunshine. It was the kind of day that should lift your spirits. But I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. I like the way you do it. Why did this week feel so unlike all the others? The days passed in their usual monotonous fashion. Camilla was distant, snapping at the slightest provocation. When Friday finally came, she showed up late again, as she often did. But this time, her intensity in bed was somehow even more forceful, almost desperate. "I want your full attention," she insisted, her voice sharp. Something inside me broke. "I'm not your servant," I shot back. "Handle it yourself." That night, I ended up alone in Kyle's old bedroom, exiled by my own anger. The following morning, I returned to grab some fresh clothes. Camilla was still in the shower, her phone left unattended on the bathroom counter. I can't quite explain what compelled me. Call it a gut feeling, fate, whatever you like. But ever since we switched to Verizon, our new phones flashed incoming messages on the lock screen. Suddenly, a text from someone called CB lit up her phone. My heart froze. Who was CB? What did their message mean? I just stood there, paralyzed. Was I the he being talked about? She hadn't received any calls the previous night, nor had she gone out. What exactly was I supposed to have done? Then, everything clicked into place. The message said, "I like the way you do it." The emphasis on "you" echoed in my mind, this time laced with a different meaning, like she was drawing a comparison between me and someone else. But who could that be? Did she even have another man? My stomach twisted, and I ran to the bathroom, sick to my core. "Are you all right?" Camilla called out, appearing in the doorway. I couldn't meet her gaze, feeling another wave of nausea. "Must have eaten something bad," I muttered, trying to brush it off. I needed time. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. Not without more than just suspicion. "Do you think it's a stomach virus?" she pressed. "Maybe," I replied, pulling away as she reached out to touch my forehead. "Don't," I barked. "You might catch it." Grasping at any excuse, I said, "I'm going to the store to get some medicine." Before she could reply, I hurried out the door. I drove around aimlessly, my thoughts racing. Had she really been unfaithful? How long had this been happening? The woman I'd loved since high school, my wife, the mother of our children, she wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she never really had been. I needed evidence, but I couldn't just rifle through her phone or computer. We'd always kept each other's privacy sacred. But now, that unspoken agreement was shattered. At the pharmacy, I grabbed every over-the-counter remedy I could: Pepto-Bismol, Dayquil, NyQuil, anything to keep up the facade. Back at the house, I pretended to take the medicine, locked myself away in Kyle's room, and avoided her. I heard a gentle knock on the door. "Are you feeling any better?" Camilla's voice came through the wood. My own voice barely made it out, thin and lifeless. She stepped in, pressing her hand to my forehead. "No fever," she observed. But inside I was burning with resentment. How could she betray me like this? "I'll make you some soup," she offered. "No thanks," I mumbled. "I'll just throw it up." I couldn't accept her kindness anymore. "I just need some rest," I said, turning my back on her. She hesitated. "All right. I'll check on you later." She left, but sleep eluded me. Instead, memories tumbled through my mind. How we'd met, our wedding, raising the kids, family trips, Kyle's graduation, Kendra's coming up soon. I replayed it all, searching for the moment when everything started unraveling. But I found nothing concrete. 2 years of growing apart, 2 years of vague unease, and still I was left with questions. Lying there on the floor, staring at the ceiling, I began to plot my next move. I needed to catch her in the act. Only then could I face the truth. It dawned on me that our marriage was finished. I'm Irish. We don't forget, and we don't forgive easily. Letting go? It's just not in my nature. The facts were clear enough. If she had slept with someone else, forgiveness was impossible. And if she expected me to quietly deal with the aftermath of her infidelity, that was something I'd never accept. That would be pure humiliation. That was a declaration of war. Then, fate seemed to intervene. Getting up to use the bathroom, I noticed her phone left unattended on the nightstand. She was busy in the kitchen. Another text from CB flashed across the screen. "I made a reservation for Wednesday afternoon." A reservation? Maybe for a hotel, possibly a restaurant. But in the middle of the week, during the day? It felt wrong, but the specifics didn't matter. My work schedule was flexible. I could easily take Wednesday off to follow her. The next few days drifted by in a fog. Evading her was easier than I'd expected. I kept pretending to be sick through the weekend. Monday and Tuesday were filled with work, but every night, lying beside her was agony. The warmth between us was gone, replaced by cold suspicion. The woman I once adored was now a stranger in my bed. Finally, Wednesday arrived. During my lunch break, I left work and parked a short distance from her office, settling in to wait. My nerves were on edge, my stomach twisted in knots. The burger I'd picked up sat untouched beside me. Hours ticked by, first one, then another, and uncertainty started gnawing at me. Was I blowing things out of proportion? Imagining scenarios that didn't exist? Making a fool of myself for no reason? At 2:30, her boss exited the building, alone. The uncertainty only deepened. Am I losing touch with reality? But just a quarter of an hour later, Camilla finally appeared. That was all I needed. I followed her through the city, keeping a careful distance. She was completely oblivious. She pulled into a rundown motel lot, parking right beside her boss's vehicle. This wasn't a hotel. There was no business meeting. This was something else. I parked several blocks away, my hands clamped tightly around the steering wheel. Camilla lingered in her car, checking her reflection. Then she climbed out. Even from afar, I noticed a change in her, a poised confidence, as if she was on a mission. She strode purposefully toward one of the doors. Right before she arrived, it opened, and Clint stood waiting. I snapped a photo the moment the door shut behind them. There was no denying it now. She'd deceived me, and the reality crashed down hard. Locking my jaw, I gripped the wheel and made my way home. Kendra was still at softball, which gave me time to think. Our house sat on the edge of town, where I'd built my own garage, a retreat, a place to get away. The upper floor served as my man cave, furnished with a bed for those nights when the couch wouldn't do. Tonight, that would be my refuge. I gathered my things and moved in upstairs. She wouldn't even notice, not right away. At 5:30, she walked in. I was sprawled on the couch, half watching TV, deliberately ignoring her presence. She paused, then asked, "Is Kendra here?" "Nope," I said. "Probably out with friends." She lingered, then shifted into that familiar, suggestive tone. "So," she murmured, "just the two of us tonight. Any ideas?" I shrugged. "Might grill some steaks." A sly smile flickered on her lips. "I had something tastier in mind." "If you want to order something, just say so," I answered flatly. She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "I'll let you know what I want." She stepped back, locking eyes with me. "Meet me in our room. Give me a minute." I played along, following her upstairs. When she came out of the bathroom, eyes closed, body ready, I saw her differently. A woman desperate to hold on to her youth, hollow and adrift. Opening the nightstand drawer, I made just enough noise to catch her attention. Her eyes fluttered open. "What are you doing?" I held up a condom, rolling it between my fingers. She flashed a coy grin. "Aren't you going to take care of me?" I shook my head. "Not tonight." Her smile faded. "What's going on?" "Just being careful." She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" My voice was calm, detached. "I can't be sure where you've been." Her face shifted from shock to rage in an instant. "You bastard!" she screamed. "How dare you say that to me? You know exactly what you've done." That was it. She snapped, unleashing a torrent of insults. "Pathetic manager, too scared to ask for a raise, not man enough for anything." That was the final blow. I pulled on my clothes as her venomous words echoed behind me, then left for the garage. It didn't take long before she stormed in after me, banging on the door and demanding a confrontation. I stayed silent, instead pulling out my phone and dialing the police. If my timing was right, they'd arrive as she lost control. Her shouts turned to threats, then everything went quiet. Something felt off. The scent of smoke reached me. I shoved the bed away and unlocked the door. Flames were spreading across my workshop. An empty gasoline can lay discarded on the ground. She'd started the fire. "What's wrong with you?" I shouted, but she didn't reply. She was outside. Looking through the window, I saw her grinning as the blaze grew. I scrambled onto the roof above the garage door. The ground was far below. With no other option, I leapt. Pain exploded in my ankle as I landed. I barely had time to react before she was on me, fists flying. Then came the sound of sirens and flashing blue lights. The front door flew open with a crash. Police officers in uniform flooded into the house, one shouting to someone to call the fire department, another grabbing Camilla and forcing handcuffs onto her wrists while she thrashed and yelled. "Go ahead, arrest me, let everything burn," she snarled. A cop faced me. "Can you explain what happened here?" I summarized the events, just enough for them to have grounds to charge her with arson. Later at the station, I gave a complete statement. When I finished, I inquired about getting a restraining order. "You'll need to speak with an attorney," an officer advised. I called my lawyer right away. By the following morning, the restraining order was in effect. Camilla was legally prohibited from coming within 500 feet of me, my residence, or my workplace. She was still being held, awaiting her court date. For the first time in ages, it felt as if fortune was finally favoring me. That night, I had to sit down with Kyle and Kendra and tell them everything. Kendra took the news with remarkable composure. She'd lived her whole life with her mother's unpredictable outbursts. When I said I was sorry, she hugged me hard. Kyle, on the other hand, was enraged. He needed some time to process it all, but I was certain he'd eventually come around. My kids were my world, and that night only strengthened my resolve to accept a position that would let me spend more time with them. The next day, I went to the law office and started the divorce proceedings. That afternoon, as I pulled up to my house, I saw a police car idling in the driveway. Camilla had already made bail, almost certainly with her boyfriend's help. Under the watchful eyes of the officers, she collected her things. I read her the court's restraining order aloud, then left without looking back. Over the weekend, I surveyed what was left of my workshop. Some tools could be salvaged, but all the specialized equipment, everything I'd poured money and effort into, was lost. My insurance adjuster was not optimistic. Since Camilla was listed as a co-owner of the property, getting compensated could be complicated. That would be a fight for another time. For now, my mind kept drifting through memories of our years together. She was my first real love, and I was hers. But now it was clear I hadn't been her only one. I couldn't forgive that. Not anymore. Trust was everything to me. Her infidelity had wounded me deeply. I found myself craving answers. Was Clint her first lover outside the marriage? What had gone so wrong between us? Had I somehow failed her? Her venomous words from that night echoed in my mind, dripping with disdain, as if she thought herself above me. Had Clint convinced her I was beneath her? Was that why she ridiculed me for managing a Napa auto parts store? I started digging into Clint Barrett. A quick search revealed he'd been promoted to general manager 2 years prior. That was also the time the owner stepped back from running things. Not long after, Camilla began to act differently. The timing was too perfect to dismiss. Clint, who'd recently divorced and had 3 children, lived an hour away. I realized I'd have to investigate further, but before I did, I decided to reach out to Camilla's supervisor. We'd crossed paths at company events before, and he'd even brought his car to my garage. I figured my previous boss could help me make contact. On Sunday evening, my phone rang. Camilla's name appeared. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "Caleb, I'm sorry," she said in a low tone. "I lost control. I set your garage on fire." I let out a long sigh, too drained to react. "So what?" She hesitated. "So, can I come back?" "No, Camilla," I replied. "There's a restraining order." "Yeah, I know. They told me when I was let out." I tensed. "Who paid for your bail?" I asked. "My parents," she admitted. "They're furious." "Well, so am I," I replied, my voice cold. She wasn't finished. "Can we talk about this? Try to fix things?" "There's nothing left to fix." "Caleb, I love you," she pleaded. "I just can't control my anger sometimes." I gave a dry, humorless laugh. "No, Camilla, I don't believe that. If you cared about me, you wouldn't be sleeping with your boss." "That's a lie," she retorted. I stood firm. "What's the lie? That I doubt you love me or that you're seeing Clint Barrett?" Silence. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "Both." I shook my head. "Camilla, I saw you at the motel. Don't insult me with more lies." She inhaled sharply. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do it? I need to hear you say it." "It was a mistake," she said softly. "Just once." "Don't lie to me again," I said, my tone steely. "I'm finished." I hung up and switched off my phone. Half an hour later, someone knocked at my door. Camilla's father stood outside looking confused. "What did she tell you?" I asked. "She said you two argued and you threw her out," he replied. I sighed. "That's only part of the story. That's how she operates." "And the jail?" I pressed. He paused. "She told me she had destroyed your car manuals, and everything rapidly went downhill from there." I could hardly believe what I was hearing, and shook my head in astonishment. "Why don't you get her version of events?" I suggested. "Or you could just tell me yourself," he countered. I hesitated, weighing my words. "I don't think you really want to know, Mr. O'Shea," I replied. "What's with the formalities, kid?" he asked, his voice gentler now. "You're part of this family," he reminded me softly. "That won't be true much longer," I murmured, barely audible. Instantly, his face clouded over. "Is it honestly that serious?" he questioned, concern etched on his features. I gave a slow, silent nod. The gravity of the situation needed no further elaboration. "How long have things been this way?" he probed. Drawing in a long breath, I replied, "I'm not sure exactly, but something shifted a couple of years back. 3 months ago, it got much worse, and this past month, it's been unbearable." I could see the hurt flash across his face as he listened. "No father wants to face these realities about his own daughter," he said quietly, sorrow in his tone. He nodded, resigned, and turned away. Hours slipped by before I received a brief message. "I'm sorry." I guessed she must have finally told him the truth. I could only imagine the upheaval in their house, raised voices, shock, maybe even tears. Knowing him, he probably insisted she confess to everything, perhaps even in church. The following morning, I called Camilla's supervisor. "Caleb, good morning. How are you?" I asked. He responded cautiously. "Is everything all right?" I steadied myself before speaking. "I have to apologize, Caleb. This won't be a pleasant conversation." He immediately sensed the seriousness. "What's this about?" he asked, his voice wary. "How do you tell a man his reliable employee is entangled with his business manager?" I decided to tread carefully. "Camilla and I are ending our marriage," I started. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that," he replied, sounding sincere. "She's always been a solid worker. What does this mean for me?" I could tell he was bracing for more. "We're divorcing because of her relationship with Clint Barrett," I said, leaving nothing unsaid. The silence on the line stretched out. Eventually, he muttered an expletive. "Damn." After a lengthy pause, he exhaled heavily. "I always had a bad feeling about Clint when I hired him. He left his family behind. I should have dug deeper." I tried to reassure him. "This isn't on you," I told him. "They both knew exactly what they were doing." He blew out a breath, gathering his thoughts. "All right, Caleb. Give me a week. I can't undo what's done, but I'll make sure the future's different." I paused before responding. "If Camilla loses her job now, it's going to cost me in the divorce settlement," I explained. "I'd appreciate it if you could keep her on staff." He thought it over. "She does her job well. I get it. I'll keep her," he agreed. I thanked him and ended the call. Soon after, the divorce papers were delivered to her workplace. I'd asked for things to be handled discreetly. Since many of her co-workers knew both of us, I couldn't help but wonder what they'd think of me now. Not long after she received the documents, she rang me up. "You idiot!" she spat, her voice brimming with anger. I hung up without replying. As a mechanic, I understood the ins and outs of cars and how to make them break down. I'd never used that knowledge for payback, but now I had a reason. Clint Barrett's Lexus was about to need some serious repairs, maybe a whole new engine or transmission. By Friday, it broke down on his commute. He had it towed, and when he finally got to the office, the boss was already waiting. Clint was fired on the spot. Camilla called again, her voice even sharper. "Hello, Camilla," I answered, feigning cheerfulness. Her voice cut through the line. "What did you do?" she demanded. I furrowed my brow, feigning ignorance. "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb. You know exactly what I'm talking about," she snapped. I remained composed. "Camilla, let's handle this through our attorneys. Don't call me anymore." She tried to interject, but I hung up before she could say more. But I wasn't done with Clint. I found his ex-wife's contact information, and she was eager to get involved. Saturday night, I took Melanie Barrett out to dinner with Kyle and Kendra. They looked confused as I introduced her. "This is Melanie. She's Clint Barrett's ex-wife," I explained. "The ex-wife of your mom's boyfriend." Melanie recounted her own story, how she'd given Clint another chance once, but after a second betrayal, she knew trust was gone for good. "Trust is everything," she told my children, her voice unwavering. "Without it, no relationship, marriage, friendship, or business can survive." By the end of dinner, it felt like she was part of our family. Turns out, my kids had figured things out a long time ago. I was truly the last to see it. As we left, Kendra gave me a thoughtful look. "Are you heading straight home?" she asked. I smiled. "Actually, I'm going dancing with Melanie." She watched me for a moment, reading my intentions. Melanie and I danced late into the evening. When I brought her home, she invited me in. I declined politely. It didn't feel right just yet, but I promised I'd take her out for breakfast soon. Old habits die hard. It was a quiet Saturday morning when Melanie and I slid into a booth at my go-to diner. The place hadn't changed, nor had Heather, the waitress who usually brought my coffee without asking. Her smile froze slightly when she saw Melanie sitting across from me instead of my usual company. "Same order for you two?" she asked, her gaze lingering on Melanie with a hint of curiosity. I chuckled. "This is Melanie," I said, giving her a friendly nod. "We danced until sunrise, and now we're in desperate need of food." Heather arched an eyebrow, but scribbled our order down without a word. Melanie and I exchanged a knowing glance and a laugh, fully aware that word would travel fast, especially to Camilla. Once we finished eating, Melanie checked out of her hotel, and we spent the rest of the day just wandering and talking. Somewhere in between, I caught myself thinking about Camilla. How anyone could hurt someone so generous and genuinely good-looking was beyond me. That evening, as Melanie prepared to head out, she gave me a sly grin. "If you ever feel like seeing more of me, don't hesitate," she teased. "I might say yes before you're ready." I had the sense that someone like her wouldn't be single much longer. She deserved someone ready for more than I could give. Not surprisingly, it didn't take long before Camilla caught wind of my recent company. A few days later, she called. "Already moving on to someone new?" she snapped. "We're still technically married," I replied, my tone laced with irony. "Didn't stop you, though." "Right, of course," she said with a scoff. "Breakfast and dinner? You two just talked all night?" she prodded, her voice sharp. "What happened isn't your concern," I said, keeping my cool. "Did you sign the papers yet?" Her voice was cold, matter of fact. "No, I'm not ready to end this," I told her plainly. "Too bad," she shot back. "It's over, whether you like it or not. Just sign, Caleb." She paused for a beat, then went for the jugular. "Think your father would have taken your mother back in this situation?" Her words echoed before the silence swallowed us. She already knew the answer, and maybe I did too. A few days later, my attorney called with an update. Camilla had signed. I figured she must have spoken with her dad. Even with the divorce finalized, our lives were still tied together through the kids. The next time I saw her was at Kendra's graduation. She stood among relatives, looking gaunt and worn down. I felt a flicker of sympathy until she opened her mouth. "Still hanging around Clint's ex?" she asked bitterly. I didn't flinch. "She's a remarkable woman," I said simply. We enjoyed the ceremony, but as I looked around, I noticed something. "Where's Clint? Wasn't he coming?" Her face fell slightly. "He lost his job," she muttered. "And that's my fault?" I asked. "It played a part," she admitted. "He struggled to find anything else. My boss refused to recommend him. He left the state," she added, her voice far away now. "And you didn't follow?" I raised an eyebrow. She couldn't meet my eyes. "I never really loved him," she murmured. I nodded slowly. "You didn't love me enough either." I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard her crying softly, her mother whispering something about emptiness. I almost laughed. Never thought I'd hear that kind of thing from her mother. The following Saturday, we held Kendra's graduation party at the house, still jointly ours technically. Camilla handled the planning, which meant lifting the restraining order, a decision that felt surreal. Watching her move through our old kitchen was like seeing a ghost in daylight. Melanie had been right. I still had feelings for Camilla, even if they were tangled in anger. Later, after the guests had left, I was in the kitchen taking out the trash when she approached me quietly. "Thanks for letting me come today," she said, almost in a whisper. I didn't look up. "You'll always be welcome," I replied flatly. "Caleb, can you look at me?" she asked, her voice trembling. I turned. Her face was soft, eyes glistening. "I'm sorry," she said, barely holding it together. "For what?" I asked, trying not to let it show. She couldn't find the words. Instead, she turned and walked away, still unable to say what I needed to hear. Time went on. The divorce process moved ahead. Some good news came when Kendra got into college. We refinanced, taking out a second mortgage, half to cover her tuition, half to help Kyle launch his auto repair dream. He'd gotten certified while working at my old shop. I couldn't have been prouder. With not much equity left, we sold the house, each walking away with about 15 grand. No alimony. Our earnings were nearly the same. Camilla pleaded guilty to setting the fire, got probation, and was ordered into anger management. Therapy seemed to be making a difference. When the divorce was finalized, she called me. "Can we talk?" Her voice was tentative. I paused. "Yeah, we can." "How about dinner?" she asked. "At our favorite spot." I got there ahead of schedule, but she was already waiting. She looked anxious, though it seemed like a different kind of nervousness than before. We kept things light at first, until she finally said, "I miss this." I agreed. "So do I." After a brief silence, she looked down and murmured, "I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" I asked, genuinely unsure. She took a steadying breath. "I was naive. Clint was exciting, ambitious, and you stayed in that little town, stuck in place. I thought you lacked drive." She hesitated, voice trembling. "Now I see it. You chose that job so you could be there for our kids, and they flourished because of you. I was blind to that, and I lost respect for you because I misunderstood." She wiped a tear away and repeated, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the way I acted when you discovered the truth, and for setting your garage on fire. Therapy has helped me gain perspective." That single conversation contained more apologies than I'd heard during our entire marriage. For the first time, I wondered if she had truly changed. I nodded. "Thank you. And I'm sorry I wasn't what you wanted." We hugged before saying goodbye, and as we parted, she said quietly, "If you ever want to talk, I'll be here." I didn't think I'd ever accept her offer. Driving home, I called Melanie. "Hey, is there still a chance for me, or did someone else sweep you off your feet?" I teased. "I'm still around," she replied, laughing. "I dated someone, but he traded me in for someone younger." "That's his mistake," I told her, and we arranged to have dinner together. That evening, I was honest with her. "Melanie, I really like you, but I want to lay my cards on the table. There are 2 reasons for that," I started. "First, you're incredible. And second, I want a little payback." She grinned. "I want you too, Caleb," she admitted. "And honestly, a bit of revenge sounds good." That night, we both found exactly what we were looking for. Lying beside her afterward, I found myself thinking back. Camilla's temper had always simmered just beneath the surface. Over time, it only got worse, sometimes with words, sometimes with actions. I never argued back. I just walked away. Maybe that's why she stopped respecting me. Maybe she saw my refusal to fight as weakness. But after she torched my garage with me inside, I realized trust was gone forever. Now I was free, but I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. Could I ever let someone get close? Being with Melanie helped me feel whole again, but I knew there was too much pain between us to ever have a real relationship. She reached across, her hand resting on my chest, and smiled. "You're amazing, Caleb. You knew exactly what I needed." I laughed. "You were the one putting in all the effort." She giggled. "Your ex must have been crazy to leave you." I shrugged. I'm pretty sure Clint couldn't compare. I found myself hoping this could continue. I really liked her. More than that, I liked feeling desired again. As we talked, I let her in on a secret. You're only the second woman I've ever been with, and only the second I've ever kissed. She kissed me goodbye before I left. I hope we see each other again, she said. Same here, I replied, but I'm not ready for anything serious yet. After a moment, I added, Actually, can I ask you one favor? She gave me a playful look. What's that? She asked. I want your ex to hear about last night, I said. And if you want, I'll make sure mine finds out too. She laughed, her eyes sparkling. That could be fun. I hope you don't think that's the only reason I was with you, I clarified. She winked. Don't worry, I enjoy a bit of payback too. Back in my car, I sent Camilla a text. Call me when you have time. Doesn't have to be today. Nothing urgent. I never used abbreviations. Just wasn't my style. Not 3 minutes later, she called. Hey, Caleb, did you decide to take me up on my offer? Her tone was curious. No, I answered, rubbing my forehead. Just feeling wiped out. Melanie's a handful, huh? She quipped. A long silence fell. Then, in a barely audible voice, she muttered, 8, 9, 10. And just like that, her anger broke through. So you called just to rub it in, you jerk, she snapped. At least she tried to count to 10 this time. I didn't call. I texted, I pointed out. And I said it wasn't urgent, I added. She exhaled. Sorry, she muttered. Apparently, anger management hadn't fully taken. I actually wanted to talk to you about Kendra, I said, steering the conversation away. Are there any upcoming holidays I should be aware of? Truthfully, I only wanted an excuse to bring up Melanie. The moment Camilla heard her name, her tone immediately changed. Let me touch base with her and get back to you, she responded. I agreed. Just keep me posted, I added, trying to sound casual and unaffected. Maybe that hint of indifference would sting a little. I wanted Camilla to think her absence didn't bother me at all, but the truth was messier. Divorce shakes a man up. Maybe it's some primitive thing, losing a partner, or maybe it's just the sting of being replaced. Defeat isn't something we're built to take lightly. Still, I wasn't about to dwell on it. A week later, right on cue, a heavy knock sounded at my door. Clint. I quickly dialed 911, gave the dispatcher my address, then hung up before opening the door. Clint barged in, fury written all over his face. Get out of here, Clint Barrett, I shouted. He glared back, undeterred. I couldn't care less, he snapped. I ought to deck you, he threatened, fists clenched. Leave before I have to make you, I shot back. You were garbage when you slept with my wife, and you still are. Stay away from her, he snarled. I met his stare with an icy smile. You mean your ex? The one who dumped you because you couldn't stay loyal? Some things never change. He looked ready to explode. Stay away from Melanie, he seethed through gritted teeth. I couldn't resist. Why? She's amazing in bed. That was the last straw. His face went red, and he swung at me. I blocked the first punch, but let the second one land. I needed it to look like I'd taken a hit. After all, a mechanic's always going to rough up a desk jockey. By the time the cops arrived, I was battered, but Clint looked even worse. They cuffed him and hauled him off. Once I'd straightened up the place, I gave Melanie a call. She picked up instantly, not even waiting for me to speak. I know. Can you believe he actually called me, begging for bail? She sounded half amused, half annoyed. She hesitated. Are you okay? I brushed it off. I've dealt with worse. He's a lot worse off than me. I'm coming over, she said, her voice playful. Looks like you need a nurse. Within the hour, she was at my place tending to my wounds. As she gathered her things to leave, she flashed me a wicked grin. I can't get enough of you. Your hands and your mouth. Just perfect. I laughed, though there was a nagging feeling inside me. Maybe I should hit the brakes a little. Then, over lunch, my phone rang. Camilla. I picked up since I wasn't doing anything important. "What did you do?" she demanded right away. I sighed, already tired. "Nice way to say hello," I replied, letting some sarcasm through. "Yeah, hi. Now answer the question." "What happened?" she pressed. "What are you even referring to? You got Clint arrested?" "No," I said, voice steady. "He managed that all by himself." "That's not what he claims," she shot back. "Of course, you believe him over me," I said, unable to mask the bitterness. She scoffed. "He's not my guy anymore. Could have fooled me," I replied. Her irritation spiked. "Why are you such a jerk?" I gave a wry smile. "I learned from the best." Her voice chilled. "Are you going to drop the charges?" "Why would I?" "He broke into my place and attacked me." "He's about to lose his job," she said angrily. "I'm asking you to think it over." I gave a cold laugh. "You're not my wife anymore, Camilla. I don't owe you a thing." Then I ended the call. Even after all that, she was still sticking up for him. Clint was looking at charges for assault and battery, 3 months inside most likely. That thought brightened my mood a bit. On Thursday night, I wandered over to Smitty's, the old bar we used to frequent. Maybe it wasn't the smartest move, but sometimes you need to return to familiar territory to clear your head. I was halfway through my beer when her laughter cut through the noise. Camilla. She'd come in with some coworkers. When she spotted me, her body tensed, and after whispering to her friends, they took the farthest booth. But if you needed to use the restroom, there was no avoiding my table. Not long after, 2 women made their way past me. One stopped at my table. "You're Camilla's ex, right?" she asked, her eyes alight with curiosity. "That's me," I answered. "We've heard all about you," she said, a sly smile on her lips. On their way back, both of them tossed flirtatious looks my way. One looked a good 10 years younger than me, the other maybe 15. Women, I realized, didn't have the same code as men. Guys don't chase their friends' exes. These 2 didn't care. Naturally, I played along. If something came of it, it would only get under Camilla's skin. I had to admit, revenge was still my fuel. I wondered how long that feeling would stick around. As one of the women left, she shook my hand and slipped me a note. I waited until no one was looking, then unfolded it. Sierra Lawrence. I glanced over at their table. Camilla's gaze stayed fixed on me, a look that shifted from sadness to a sharp, simmering anger. All those years we'd shared replayed in my head like a film on fast forward. Though my feelings for her never fully disappeared, Camilla was always a bit of a wild card, unpredictable as a summer thunderstorm. Maybe that was the hook that kept me close. Love has a tendency to blur the line between sense and foolishness. Would things get better if she was no longer in my life? The question circled my mind with no clear answer. Sometimes ignorance is easier to live with than the truth. I finished my beer in a few gulps, dropped a $10 bill on the counter, offered the waitress a half-hearted wave, and slipped out the door. I couldn't bear to glance back at Camilla. The last thing I wanted was for her to spot the tears welling in my eyes. Instead, I dug Sierra's card out of my pocket and dialed her number. After 3 rings, she picked up. "Hello?" she greeted. "Hey, Sierra. It's Caleb. We met last Thursday," I reminded her. I could hear the smile in her voice when she replied. "Of course. You were that handsome guy sitting alone, right?" A flush crept up my cheeks. "Yeah, guilty as charged." She didn't waste time. "Want to tell me what's on your mind?" Her directness caught me off guard. "I think I do," I admitted. "Are you around tonight?" she asked. I paused, then gave in. "Sure. How about Smitty's at 7:30? "Sounds good. See you there," she answered, and the call ended. Suddenly, nerves flooded in. Sierra was easily 10 years younger than me. What could she possibly see in a guy like me? Did I even remember how dating worked anymore? It had been a quarter century since my last first date. What did women even expect these days? I supposed I'd find out soon enough. This evening would be my test run. I chose my best outfit, maybe a bit much for Smitty's, but I wanted to make a good impression. Once there, conversation with Sierra was effortless. She was attractive, quick-witted, and fun. Eventually, I had to bring up what had been nagging at me the whole time. "You work with my ex-wife, don't you? You must have heard all sorts of terrible things about me," I joked. "So why are you here?" She just grinned. "Way before Camilla started hanging around with Clint, she used to mention you in interesting ways." I leaned in, intrigued. "Wait, you're saying Clint was around before the divorce?" She nodded. "It started innocently, lunches and such, but I'd wager their affair began a few months before you split." That lined up with what I'd always guessed. Sierra scooted a little closer, dropping her voice. "At every bachelorette party, Camilla would go on and on about how incredible you were in bed." She flicked her tongue over her lips, making me blush again. "She made you sound like a legend," she teased. "I get the feeling tonight's going to be memorable." The look in her eyes was almost feral. Was I ready for this? As dinner ended, the waitress brought the check with a sly smile. "You might want to keep this," she whispered with a wink. "Could be your lucky night." I shot her a puzzled look, but tucked the check away just the same. Sierra slipped her hand into mine as we headed outside. "Up for dessert?" she asked, voice low. Once again, I felt like I was fumbling through unknown territory. "Your place or mine?" she said, giving me a playful arch of her eyebrow. "I'll let you choose," I replied, trying to sound confident. "Let's see your place. You can tell a lot about a man from his home." She hopped into my truck, and I glanced at her. "Is your car okay to stay here overnight?" She laughed. "I came by Uber, just in case." Smart. She was ready for anything. It made me realize just how much the dating world had changed while I wasn't looking. As soon as we got inside, we headed straight for the bedroom. No hesitation at all. We didn't wake up until almost 10 the next morning. We grabbed lunch together, and then I dropped her off at her place. Before she left, she made me promise to call her soon. I told her I would, and I meant it. She was quickly becoming something I craved. Later that afternoon, while paying for groceries, I found the check from Smitty's still tucked in my wallet. On the back, I noticed a name and a phone number, Holly, the waitress. Clearly, adjusting to single life was going to be an adventure. On a whim, I stopped by Smitty's again after work. Holly was there, as I hoped, and she was more in my age range, laid back and easy to talk to. We flirted a little, and soon enough, I asked her out. She was busy on weekends, so we settled on a Wednesday. As I walked to my truck, my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Caleb, it's Bianca. We met at Smitty's last Thursday. I was with Sierra when we came by your table." "Right," I said, remembering her. There was a pause before she continued. "Sierra told me she had an amazing time with you Saturday. I was wondering if you'd like to go out with me sometime." I couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. "Aren't I a little out of your usual age bracket?" I asked. She shook her head, smiling. "Not at all. Guys with a few more years under their belt are usually more stable, easier to be around." I chuckled, accepting the compliment. "I'll take that as a positive." I suggested, "Are you around this Saturday?" "That's perfect," she replied, her excitement obvious. We made plans, and to my surprise, she turned out to be far bolder than I'd imagined. That night, we did things I hadn't even considered before. My Wednesday evenings with Holly became something I genuinely looked forward to. Sunday rolled around and Melanie invited me over for a home-cooked meal. How could I say no to that? Later, we ended up working off the food together. Being single was definitely starting to show its advantages. But Monday evening, the call I'd been expecting finally came through. Camilla's name lit up my phone. What exactly do you think you're doing? She demanded. I leaned back, keeping my voice casual. Just watching some TV. Why? That's not what I'm talking about. You're 40 years old and you're dating women half your age? Aren't you even a little embarrassed? I kept it light. You're referring to Sierra and Bianca, I take it? That's right, she shot back. They're the ones who reached out to me, I said. Was I supposed to turn them down and just stay home alone? She let out a heavy sigh. Stop getting involved with my coworkers, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. And why's that? Because I said so, she replied firmly. I gave her a small, amused smile. That's not really a convincing reason anymore. We're not together. I can see whoever I want, I added. Her voice grew sharper. You're just doing this to get at me. I laughed. That's not it at all. But if it bothers you, well, I suppose that's just an added bonus. She was clearly annoyed. How is any of this my issue? I couldn't help but tease her. Because now your colleagues are probably whispering about you, right? Wondering how you ever let me go? She fell silent. Some of them think you made a mistake, I continued, though I held back from pressing further. I'll ask them to keep it discreet if that'll make things easier. No, she snapped. Just stop seeing them. That's not happening unless they're the ones to end things, I said calmly. I enjoy their company. They make me feel younger, and honestly, I haven't felt this confident in a long time. You're unbelievable, she muttered before hanging up. I found myself grinning as I thought about the wild week I'd just had. But by Thursday night, Camilla was calling again. I braced myself for round 2. Hello? I answered, keeping my tone neutral. So now you're seeing the waitress from Smitty's too? She accused. I couldn't stop myself from smiling. At least she's closer to my age. I thought you wanted me to stop going out with younger women. I just don't want you dating anyone, she said, clearly frustrated. Every time I'm at work, people ask why I let you slip away. I chuckled. Just tell them you found someone whose ambitions matched yours better. She paused, her voice much softer. Maybe I should just admit I messed up, she murmured, then hung up. I sat there for a moment, lost in thought. We'd had some great times together, but I realized she'd started to drift away long before I even noticed. In hindsight, maybe it all started when Clint came on board. It was a small comfort to know she finally recognized her mistake. But did that actually make me feel better? Part of me was pleased she had regrets. Another part of me wished we could turn back the clock, but I knew that chance was gone. The past couldn't be rewritten, and this particular chapter would always linger in my mind. Feeling restless, I grabbed my keys and headed out to buy some beer. Just as I was leaving, my phone buzzed. It was Sierra. What's going on? She asked. I just picked up a case of beer. Figured I'd drown out a few memories tonight, I joked. Maybe I can help with that, she teased. I might be just what you need. I laughed. You're welcome to stop by. A few drinks later, everything else faded into the background. Around 2 a.m, she stretched and said, I've got work in a few hours. She started gathering her things, and as she picked up her purse, I said, By the way, thanks for you and Bianca giving Camilla the heads up. But if you could keep tonight quiet, I'd appreciate it. She smiled. You don't have to worry about that. But honestly, I still can't believe she let you go, she added. I exhaled. Thanks for saying that. She leaned in, kissed me gently, and whispered, Any time. With a mischievous grin, she leaned close and whispered, And I really do mean any time. Over the following year, the number of women in my casual circle only increased. Sierra, Bianca, Melanie, Holly. Once people started talking, more and more women were intrigued to discover what all the fuss was about. I never turned anyone away. Every meeting became its own adventure, and each woman arrived with her own expectations and personal boundaries. I quickly learned how to ensure every one of them left satisfied. Around this time, Camilla started ribbing me, sometimes joking that I was like a male escort. I brushed off her teasing at first. The truth was, I enjoyed being around women and I liked making them feel good. Oddly enough, each one would eventually echo the same words that had sparked everything. I like the way you do it. One night, Camilla found me at Smitty's. Idly spinning her glass, she said, "You know, we really did have something special. How about one last time, for old time's sake?" I simply shook my head. It wouldn't feel right. What I did for you back then came from love. Now, it would just be empty for both of us. She sighed, looking genuinely disappointed. "I understand," she replied quietly, offering a faint nod before turning away. Not long after, an even bigger opportunity presented itself. I was offered the Napa franchise. The owner kept his word. He thanked me for sticking by him and made me a generous offer to purchase the business. It meant taking out a loan, but the store was thriving. I wasn't worried. At first, I'd done all of this for us, for Camilla and me, to build something solid. Now, it was solely for myself. That night, I asked Camilla to dinner. She agreed. I reserved a table at the finest restaurant in town. When she walked in, she was stunning. A flowing black dress, fiery red hair, and piercing green eyes. She smiled at me. "So, what's the big occasion?" I smiled back. "Let's order first. I'll tell you once we're eating." I let the anticipation build. Eventually, her curiosity got the better of her. "Okay, seriously, what are we celebrating?" I leaned in and met her gaze. "I bought the Napa franchise, all 4 stores." She froze, clearly taken aback. I watched as understanding dawned on her, her face shifting from surprise to regret. She opened her mouth, but words seemed to fail her. I spoke softly. "I know it's a lot to take on, but now I have something lasting, something secure for my future. I wanted you to hear it from me first. This means our kids will have something real to inherit. Whether they decide to run it or sell, they'll have a safety net. And if we ever have grandkids, it'll benefit them too. That makes me happy." For the first time that evening, sadness clouded her face. "What's wrong?" I asked gently. Her lips trembled as she began to cry. "I believed Clint when he said you'd never make it," she choked out. "He convinced me you had no drive, no real ambition. I let myself believe you'd never go anywhere." Tears streamed down her cheeks as her voice wavered. "I lost faith in my own husband. I stopped respecting you," she admitted, wiping her eyes and trying to regain her composure. "It was so easy to believe him," she went on. "He told me he was better than you, and I was foolish enough to listen." She looked at me, her face crumpled with regret. "Caleb, I'm so sorry for thinking that, and for everything I did." Her words were barely audible. "You were a good husband, until I destroyed that. You were a great father, at least I didn't ruin that part, and you were the best lover I ever had. All those women you've been with, they all say the same thing, and I threw it away." Her sobs intensified. "I'm sorry, Caleb," she whispered. "I hope you'll find it in you to forgive me." Still crying, she abruptly stood up and hurried to the bathroom. A server quietly followed behind, because women never go to the restroom alone. I let out a deep sigh. This evening was meant to be a celebration. I hadn't expected how hard it would hit her. I felt bad for her, but I knew there was nothing I could do to comfort her. That part of our lives was over. I signaled for the check. When Camilla returned, her eyes were swollen and red. Before she could speak, I stood up. "I already paid. Let me take you home." She nodded, dabbing at her tears. "Thank you. I'm sorry for ruining your night, and everything between us." She cried quietly during the drive back. I wanted to say something comforting, but I knew it would only make things more painful. At her door, she hesitated, silently asking for something I couldn't give. I sighed. I'm sorry, Camilla. There's no going back for us. She nodded, turned away, and closed the door behind her. The next few years passed in a blur. Work, daily life, and a steady stream of women kept me busy. Rumors persisted, and word of mouth ensured my calendar stayed full. Seldom did a week go by without at least 2 visitors. I always made sure to be cautious. Lately, Camilla and I rarely spoke about anything other than our kids. The latest topic dominating our conversations was Kyle's choice to get engaged. He hadn't known Aubrey long, just 8 months, but he was convinced she was the one. Their story began when she brought her car to his shop. After that, everything shifted. They soon announced plans for an engagement party so the families could meet. On the day of the event, I got to Kyle's place early to lend a hand as he got ready. We were nearly finished when Camilla showed up. Even after all these years, she still turned heads, a fact that never quite left me. She approached me directly. "We never had an engagement party ourselves," she remarked. I continued arranging glasses. "That's right," I answered, "but everyone always knew we were together." She softened her tone. "Do you ever remember how you proposed to me?" I let out a long breath. Camilla, age might be catching up with me, but I could never forget those promises. Sometimes, I couldn't help wanting to sting her, if only slightly. I noticed the uncertainty flicker in her eyes. "Sorry. Maybe it's better if we leave the past behind us." "It's been 3 years, Caleb. I'm aware, but today's for Kyle and Aubrey. Let's just try to keep the peace, okay?" She gave a small nod. "We could be civil, not just for today, maybe," she said, that familiar air of hers slipping through. Camilla was always an enigma, regretful one moment, distant the next. But none of that mattered just then. The guests were filing in, and Kyle and Aubrey were busy making introductions. Suddenly, I heard Aubrey call out, "Mom!" My attention snapped upward. Standing across the room was a woman who immediately stood out, elegant in a floral dress, golden hair catching the light, blue eyes that seemed to draw you in. Her smile was dazzling. Kyle nudged me, pulling me back to earth. "Dad, you with me?" I blinked. "That's Aubrey's mom?" I asked, surprised. He grinned at my reaction. "Yeah, and just so you know, she's single, but don't get your hopes up." I frowned, playing along. "Why not?" He chuckled. "She's religious. Aubrey picked her college because of her mom, and after what her ex-husband did, she has zero tolerance for guys with a past like yours." I couldn't help but laugh. "Kyle, before your mother and I split, I never strayed. If I found someone I could trust, I'd give her everything." He studied me thoughtfully. "Still, I doubt she's your kind of woman, but I'll introduce you." "I'd like that," I told him. Kyle led me over. "Mrs. Walker," he said. "This is my father, Caleb." Aubrey's mother greeted him warmly. "Kyle, you'll be my son-in-law soon. You can just call me Mom," she teased. Camilla appeared right then. "Sure, as long as he doesn't forget who his real mom is," Camilla chimed in with a sly grin. Kyle rolled his eyes. "Mom, meet Aubrey's mom, Autumn." The 2 women exchanged polite, slightly strained greetings and began chatting. I was about to introduce myself, but, as usual, Camilla stepped in before I had a chance. Not wanting to spoil the moment, I drifted off to mingle, fielding the usual jabs about my love life. While talking with a guest named Candace, Camilla suddenly reappeared and quipped, "Careful around him. You never know what you might pick up." Irritation flared in me. I turned to Candace. "Ignore her. She's just upset not to be the center of my attention for once." Camilla shot me a glare. "You're impossible, Caleb." I smiled. "You're the one interfering." "Maybe we should just keep things friendly and keep our distance," I suggested, turning back to Candace. "Want to take a walk?" I didn't have real interest in Candace. It was just to get a rise out of Camilla. Later that afternoon, I finally found a moment with Autumn. "So you're Caleb, huh?" she said with a cool detachment. I laughed. Whatever stories you've heard, yes, I'm Kyle's dad. She folded her arms. Kyle's a good man. I hope he treats Aubrey right. He loves her. He'll do right by her, I assured her. She studied me. And you believe he's ready for marriage? I do, I said simply. Let's hope he stays true to her, she replied, her meaning clear. I met her gaze. I'm sure he will. A small, knowing smile played on her lips. We should talk, but not in this crowd. I grinned. Just say where and when. She thought for a moment. Tomorrow, after church. Cracker Barrel. I'll be there, I promised. For the rest of the party, our glances kept meeting across the room, each of us still figuring out the other. To be honest, I couldn't quite pin down how I felt about her. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Camilla walked over to me. Aubrey seems like a sweet girl, but they're moving way too fast, she said, crossing her arms. Did you know they're planning to get married before the year ends? By then, they'll have only been together for a year and a half. I took a measured sip from my drink. Kyle's not naive. He knows what he wants. But yeah, rushing into marriage can backfire. I gave a shrug that was more thoughtful than indifferent. We spent years together before we said I do. And that didn't stop our marriage from falling apart, she said, her mouth tightening. Only real commitment holds a marriage together, I responded softly. And I believe those two are in it for the long haul. Her gaze dropped, and something unreadable passed over her face. Maybe regret. We both understood what hadn't been said. She was the one who walked away from our vows. That Sunday, I woke before the sun rose. I shaved, took my time in the shower, dressed in a suit, and drove nearly an hour to get to Autumn's church. I made a point to arrive early and slipped into a seat near the back. It was nothing like the Catholic churches I'd grown up with. No stained glass windows, no candles flickering on altars, no elaborate decor, just a plain stage and a wooden cross mounted above it. The environment felt unfamiliar, but I was determined to see it through. Slowly, the congregation trickled in, chatting easily, dressed in casual jeans and polos, many sipping from Starbucks cups. Glancing at my suit, I realized I was clearly overdressed, though no one seemed to care. People smiled and welcomed me with warmth. Still, I kept scanning the crowd for Autumn, unsure if she'd even show. Then the music began, and I saw her. She was up front, singing, her voice clear and full of grace. Partway through the third song, her eyes landed on mine, and a soft smile touched her lips. When the music ended, she came over and took the seat beside me. "Didn't think you'd actually come," she said in a quiet voice. I adjusted my tie, suddenly aware of how formal I looked. Guess the suit was a bit much. She chuckled. "You can ditch the jacket if it helps," she offered, so I slipped it off. The service was far more relaxed than anything I was used to, but there was something easy and welcoming about it. Afterward, she introduced me to the pastor and a few folks from the congregation. "This is Aubrey's future father-in-law," she said with a touch of amusement, emphasizing the future. Later, we ended up at Cracker Barrel, keeping the conversation light as we ate. But once the plates were nearly empty, she set down her fork and laced her fingers together. "So, Caleb," she said, her tone shifting slightly, "people say you've got a bit of a reputation, that you sleep around." She wasn't accusing, just stating it plainly. I gave a slight smile. "And how would you define that? Being a womanizer?" "Someone who chases women, gets what he wants, and then disappears," she replied without hesitation. I exhaled slowly. "By that standard, then no, that's not me." She studied me quietly. "So the gossip isn't true?" I leaned forward a bit. "Let me tell you how I got here," I said. She raised an eyebrow, giving me the floor. "Go on." "I was married to Camilla. You met her at the party." She nodded, silent. "She cheated on me. Her boss, of all people. I caught them together at a motel. Her face remained calm, though I could tell she was absorbing every word. After that, she made life hell. The night I confronted her about the affair, she lost it, set fire to my garage. I was still inside. A flicker of shock passed through her features. That's when I filed for divorce. Got a restraining order, too. Once it all settled, I started dating again. She said nothing, just listened closely. I figure Camilla probably spread those rumors. A few women were curious to see if the stories were true. She kept waiting, so I kept going. I never went looking for women. They approached me, and I didn't say no. Autumn didn't speak, only watched me with a thoughtful expression. Word got around. One date led to another, and for a couple of years, I didn't turn down any invitations. I met her eyes. I liked being with them. I made them feel appreciated. There was a pause between us, filled only by the soft clatter of nearby tables. If you think that was wrong, I said eventually, then I'm sorry. Her face showed no judgment, just curiosity and a touch of skepticism. And me? She asked softly. Where do I fit into all this? I smiled. You're beautiful, Autumn, and I've heard you've been through your own share of heartache. I didn't want to spend my nights alone. You chose to shut people out. I'd like a chance to get to know you better, maybe take you out sometime. What do you think? She let out a slow breath. And Camilla? Did she ever try to come back? I shook my head. Some wounds can be forgiven, sure, but forgetting? That's different. You can't just wipe away betrayal. Once trust is broken, it never fully returns. That's not a life. It's surviving. Autumn nodded slowly. My ex wanted me to pretend nothing ever happened, to just go back to being his wife. But I couldn't do it. My sense of self had been deeply shaken. I swore to myself that no man would ever be given the power to hurt me like that again. In that way, I told her, we shared something in common. I spent time with women, sure, but I always held part of myself back. I never really let anyone in. I kept my defenses high. She gave me a thoughtful look before repeating her question. So where do I fit into all of this? I decided to be straightforward. We both have a hard time letting our guard down. I want to take the time to really understand you, to find out if this connection between us could grow into something genuine. Her eyes narrowed slightly. And the others? She asked. If this becomes real, I said, then it'll just be you and me. She crossed her arms, locking eyes with me. There's something I need you to know, she said seriously. I don't sleep with a man unless I'm his wife. I couldn't help but appreciate her honesty. It made me smile. Back in high school, I had been with Camilla. We waited until our wedding night, both of us virgins. Sure, we fooled around a bit, but she wanted to wait, and I honored that. Autumn raised a brow. So my boundaries don't throw you off? Not in the slightest, I replied. I'm willing to wait. She took a deep breath. Thanks for being open with me. I really like you and I want to see where this could go. Time moved quickly after that. 4 months passed, during which we spent time together twice a week, sometimes at her place, sometimes at mine. Though I was still casually seeing other women, something had shifted. The spark I used to feel with them was gone. Even Candace, who I'd met at a party and gone out with a few times, couldn't hold my interest anymore. As we lay on her couch one evening, she whispered the same thing I'd heard before. I like the way you move through life. But instead of flattery, her words stirred discomfort in me. Then, during dinner not long after, Autumn looked into my eyes and said, Caleb, I'm ready to be with just you. Something inside me clicked. I reached for her hand across the table. You just made me the happiest man alive, I told her. From here on out, I'm yours completely. Her smile was quiet, sincere. I added, honestly, these last few months, everything outside of being with you felt empty. Maybe it's too soon to say, but Autumn, I love you. Some might have called it rushed, but I'd learned that truth was more important than timing. She hesitated, squeezed my hand, and replied, I think I'm falling in love with you too. Just be patient with me. And I was, content both in heart and mind. One night, while I was enjoying a rare moment of peace, my phone rang. The caller ID read Camilla. Hey Caleb, she said. Hi Camilla, what's going on? You sound happy, she noted. I am, I told her honestly. What's up? Would you come over for dinner? She asked. There's something I need to say. I paused. When? Tonight, she answered without hesitation. I'll cook your favorite. Roast beef with vegetables. Come by at 7. You don't want to go out somewhere? I asked. No, she replied softly. Just the two of us. Another pause. Okay, I agreed. Should I bring anything? Maybe a bottle of wine? Sure, I said. I'll see you at 7. But as I ended the call, a strange feeling settled over me. We hadn't really spoken since the divorce, so why now? Wanting to be transparent, I called Autumn right after. She let out a quiet sigh. Probably something to do with the wedding. It's coming up next month. Could be, I said. She's trying to tempt me with roast beef. Autumn chuckled. Call me afterward and tell me how it went. I will, I promised. At exactly 7, I knocked on Camilla's door, my stomach a knot of nerves. We started the meal with small talk, but eventually she laid her fork down, inhaled, and gave me a serious look. Caleb, she began, Kyle's wedding has me thinking. Thinking about what? I asked. About us. I exhaled. Camilla, we're not together anymore. She brushed past that. Do you remember how it used to be between us? How good things were? I gave her a half smile. Yeah, we were young, but it was real. I paused before adding, we really did have something. Her tone softened. So what happened? Where did we go wrong? I looked down, then back at her. Life just got in the way. She leaned forward slightly. I was talking to Sierra at work, she said. I raised an eyebrow, curious. She said you were exactly what she needed. Her words hung in the air like a question. Later that evening, I had a conversation with Bianca. She brought up that you'd finally stopped playing around. A slight grin crept onto my face. Not because of her words, but because I realized something. Neither Kyle nor Aubrey had breathed a word about Autumn when they'd spoken with Camilla. I admired their discretion. Camilla, however, misread my smile. Her voice was gentle when she spoke. Maybe we could give it another shot, she said. I arched an eyebrow, unsure how to respond. She leaned closer, her fingers gently resting on mine. We used to have something good, Caleb. My mind snagged on that word, used. I took a slow breath before answering. I've come to understand something, I began. I have to forgive you, to really let go. A spark lit her eyes, a flash of hope. I do forgive you, I added, but I can't erase what happened, and neither of us can stay stuck in the past. Her face crumbled as her eyes welled up. Oh, Caleb, I'm sorry. For everything. For what I did to you. To us. Her voice broke. But we could move on, can't we? Try again? She wasn't ready to accept what I was trying to say. As much as it hurt, I had to be honest with her. There's someone else, I said quietly. She inhaled sharply. Bianca told you I've changed, that I've left the games behind. And she's right. But there's more to it than just that. She didn't speak. She waited, silently urging me to go on. I've fallen in love. I'm ready for something real. I've grown. I'm not the same person I was. She sat there, listening, quietly absorbing each word. After a long pause, she finally asked, Who is it? Autumn, I said. Aubrey's mom. Her expression softened as her shoulders lowered. She got it. Despite everything between us, she understood what that meant. When I loved someone, I loved them fully, and that love wasn't hers anymore. The rest of the meal passed without words. A heavy silence settled between us. After finishing, I stood up. Camilla, thank you, for tonight and for all the memories. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but someday, someone new will walk into your life. When that happens, love him the way you once loved me. With everything. Stay loyal. The anger I'd once carried had faded. I had let it go, because of Autumn. She'd shown me grace by forgiving her own past. If we both hadn't been broken once, we never would have fit together now. On my drive home, I called her. How did it go? She asked, a trace of caution in her tone. She already knew the answer. She wanted another chance, I replied. I figured as much. She gets what she lost now. And you know what you've gained? Yeah, I said, pausing for a beat. And I'm better for it. Autumn, I love you. You've changed me. She let out a soft breath. And then, for the first time, she said it. I love you too, Caleb Morgan. I had known it long before. She'd shown me in countless ways. But hearing the words, those 3 small words, meant everything. At Kyle and Aubrey's wedding, Autumn and I spent the whole night side by side, dancing, laughing, holding hands. People kept joking that we looked like the couple who had just gotten married. Camilla was there too, but she slipped out early. Watching us together must have been too much. 3 months later, it was our turn to walk down the aisle. We kept it small, just family and a few close friends gathered at the church. Camilla wasn't there. She said she had other commitments, though I suspect the truth was simply that it still hurt. But eventually, she met someone new. I genuinely hope it turns out well for her. And there's one last thing. That night, as Autumn and I lay together, she whispered something that once haunted me. I love the way you do it. But this time, the word love carried a warmth, a truth, that changed everything. The first story ends here, but the next one? It's something you won't want to miss. Let's start. Although it was just a short distance from his flat, he had never stepped inside the pub before. Located next to the tennis club, it went by the name Center Court. While he enjoyed a good glass of wine or an occasional flute of champagne, what he really yearned for was a crisp, strong cider. Rumors had circulated that they brewed their own, so curiosity finally got the best of him. He decided to give it a try and was pleasantly surprised. In fact, the cider was so satisfying that he figured he might as well try something from their food menu as well. He went for a baked potato, cut into chunks and covered in a rich chili con carne, topped off with a generous scoop of sour cream. It was exactly what he needed. As he prepared to leave, he thought about asking the landlord if they sold the cider in bottles. It would be a great way to take a taste of the pub home. Just then, a loud commotion erupted from a rowdy group on the far side of the bar. They appeared to be rugby players, loud, boisterous, and not the usual crowd for this kind of place. Everyone was laughing heartily, except for one. He'd often wondered just how terrifying it must be to choke to death. It wasn't necessarily the pain that made it such a horrific thought, but the ordinary circumstances in which it happened. Imagine sitting down to dinner with loved ones, only to suddenly find yourself struggling for breath, fighting for your life, while the people around you think it's nothing serious. They'd probably laugh and say things like, "Went down the wrong pipe," patting you on the back as if it were nothing. By the time anyone realized the severity of the situation, it could already be too late. The laughter would be the final haunting memory. As he approached the group, the man who was choking had started to show the telltale bluish tint around his lips, and the atmosphere had grown eerily quiet. The others moved aside as he made his way over. While he knew the Heimlich maneuver could be performed with the victim seated, the man was enormous. He pulled the man upright, wrapping his arms around him and pinning his arms to his sides. He positioned his clenched fist just above where he guessed the navel was, pressed in, and delivered a sharp, upward thrust. To an outsider, it might have seemed like an awkward embrace between two men, but there was no time to care about appearances. The man was huge, and it wasn't until the third abdominal thrust that something finally came free. A chunk of bread, part of a burger bun, shot out of his mouth. The aftermath was uncomfortable. He wasn't fond of being seen as some kind of hero. Yet the group showered him with enthusiastic slaps on the back, so many, in fact, that they started to hurt. The mood quickly shifted to sheepish embarrassment as the others realized just how clueless they had been. The man who had been choking introduced himself as Sven, a name that seemed almost too fitting for someone of his size. Numbers were exchanged, and someone offered to buy him a pint of that same cider, which he declined. He was the designated driver. He accepted their gratitude with a humble smile. Sven was breathing fine now, but his friends insisted on taking him to the doctor, just to be sure. It probably wasn't serious, but he had been deprived of oxygen for a while. About a week later, Sven called to suggest they grab a drink, just the two of them. Our protagonist wasn't particularly eager to go, but figured it was best to just get it over with. Their conversation mostly revolved around Sven repeatedly saying, "If there's anything I can ever do." Eventually, the evening came to an end. What had started as an impromptu pub visit had now run its course. His wife, Judy, had been a serious tennis player during her university days, so much so that she represented her county. Lately, she'd been thinking about taking it up again and wanted to sign up for lessons at the local club. It made perfect sense. She had the time, and he saw no reason to object. His business was thriving, and he ran it himself. Judy never had to work, and now that their son Neil was away at university, her days were free. He happily paid for a month's worth of lessons. It would give her something to do outside the house and keep her active. "I'll be heading in every Tuesday morning, Colin," she told him. They had placed her in the intermediate group to start, but she was confident she would move up quickly and perhaps even catch the eye of a better coach. "Go for it," he encouraged her. "It'll keep you out of trouble." With Neil now living independently, it was the perfect time for her to branch out and discover new interests. He'd never understood how she tolerated the endless cycle of coffee dates and lunch gatherings with other women. On that first Tuesday, he was surprised when she came downstairs early, drawn by the smell of coffee. Normally, she would stay in bed far too long, so this was a pleasant change. She was dressed in oversized gym clothes, a loose tee and baggy shorts, and she glanced down at her outfit. "I'll be dripping sweat after the first few lessons. I'm out of shape," she remarked. "It's not a fashion show," he teased. "You look great." When he got home that evening, she had clearly showered, but it was evident that she hadn't used up all her energy on the tennis court. That night, things got passionate, wild even. If this was the reward for a few tennis lessons, he'd consider them money well spent. By the end of the night, the bed was banging against the wall, each thud punctuating the moment. He grinned through the noise until they finally collapsed, exhausted and satisfied. Judy leaned in close and whispered, "You need to move the bed forward again. That racket nearly ruined everything." "Nearly," he laughed. "I don't know how it always ends up back there. I'll fix it tomorrow." Wednesday came, and he finally tackled the bed problem. It was an old iron frame he'd inherited from his grandfather, and honestly, he never understood why he was so attached to it. It wasn't exactly a thing of beauty. The source of the noise was a brass knob mounted in the center of the headboard. There was a dent in the plaster from the repeated banging. He had grown tired of dragging the bed away from the wall every few weeks. He unscrewed the knob, but without it, the bed looked ridiculous. Besides, he knew that another part of the bed would just slam into the wall next time. Then, suddenly, an idea struck him. In the kitchen, I finally found what I was searching for. It fit snugly in my hand, a yellow sponge about an inch thick with a green abrasive side. "Think you know what this is, babe?" I asked her, holding it up. She eyed it with curiosity. "Is that a dish sponge?" "Yep," I replied. "The rough side is pressed against the brass ball, and the soft side is up against the wall. I just taped everything together. Problem solved." "You're such a penny pincher," she teased. Why not just buy a new bed? Something fresh, something modern. We're not exactly poor, you know. You're rolling in money. I didn't get rich by wasting it, I retorted. And besides, I love this bed. My mother was conceived on it. She recoiled slightly. That's disturbing, she said. But yeah, it's comfortable. And at least when we bang it against the wall now, it's silent. What about the dent? She asked, looking at the wall. I patched it with polyfilla, I said. Want to try out the fix? You've got work. I am work. I can show up late. We collapsed on the bed, making love quietly, the sponge doing its job. A week later, after tennis lessons, Judy had risen to the top tier of students. We decided to upgrade her to a more exclusive instructor, one who, naturally, charged a higher rate. His name was Edward. He was only coaching at our club for the summer before heading to Wimbledon, where he would take over as the lead coach at the prestigious All-England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club. I thought Wimbledon was just for tennis, I remarked. Well, now you know they play croquet too, she responded with a sly grin. Is that outfit for your top student status, or are you trying to catch Edward's attention? She was wearing a tight sports tee over a seamless bra. While the shirt didn't cling to her curves, it certainly highlighted her silhouette. The shirt barely skimmed her waist, and her shorts were just as minimal. Something like a sprinter's gear, but bright white. Her form was on full display. It's not for him, idiot, she laughed. I want to be the best. I need to look the part. I want others to look up to me. Still, I felt uneasy when she added Thursday mornings to her training schedule, not a club session, but private lessons. Apparently Thursday was Edward's only day off, so he charged whatever he wanted. And it wasn't cheap. He could have been earning as much as I did. My curiosity got the best of me, and I decided I had to see this Edward guy in action. But on that Thursday, a work emergency came up. I had no choice but to handle it, and the issue took over 4 hours to resolve. I bought my team a late lunch afterward, but missed my opportunity to spy on her session. Her next Tuesday lesson wasn't private either, so I had to wait another week. She told me her next session with Edward would be from 9 to 10. This time, I made sure nothing at work would interfere. I went to the office as usual, but swapped to one of our company vehicles and drove to the club. Judy arrived at 8:45, wearing a baggy tracksuit and carrying a sports bag. She went inside to change. Several courts were open, and she returned to the farthest one. At exactly 9, she emerged, dressed in all white, but in an outfit I hadn't seen before. Her top had spaghetti straps and a low-cut back. The fabric was thicker than a t-shirt, but still thin enough to leave little to the imagination. She wasn't wearing a bra. The outfit tried to keep her figure under control, but with every serve and volley, it failed. Even from my vantage point, I could make out her curves. She wore a white pleated skirt to match the top, short enough that her underwear was visible if she moved just slightly wrong. When she bent down to tie her shoe, I got an unobstructed view. I wondered if she often pulled stunts like that. I briefly reconsidered her outfit. Maybe it was a one-piece swimsuit under a ballerina skirt. And then, as if things weren't already suspicious, Edward appeared. He looked like a work of art. Soft blonde hair styled just above his ears, a chiseled jawline framed by designer stubble that made me wonder if the blonde was dyed. His skin was sun-kissed, his muscles well-defined, and his smile dazzling. If ancient Greece had a god of temptation, this guy would be the model. Judy had touched up her makeup with lipstick and looked radiant. Even with her hair pulled into a tight ponytail, she was stunning. And her long, athletic legs, she always attracted attention, but today, she was glowing, her skin shimmering with sweat. She didn't notice me, and honestly, she probably wouldn't have even if she looked my way. I watched for about half an hour before slipping off to explore the club's lounge area. The lounge offered all sorts of juices and health drinks, but I grabbed a coffee and settled in with a newspaper. I had just poured my second cup and was getting absorbed in an article about corporate finance when I glanced down at my watch. It was nearing 10:20 when I unintentionally muttered a quiet, "Oh." The realization came with a woman's voice asking, "Is something wrong?" She had been sitting at my table, and until that very moment, I hadn't noticed her presence. I quickly recovered, saying, "No, nothing at all. Just lost track of time." "Is 10:20 considered late?" she inquired, her smile soft and easy. I briefly considered that my shower after tennis had taken longer than expected, but that wasn't a detail I needed to share. We exchanged introductions, and she introduced herself as Petra. The conversation flowed effortlessly. She mentioned how the club was buzzing about the new coach, even though his time there was only temporary. "Too bad he's only here for the summer," she remarked. "Come autumn, he'll be back at Wimbledon," I responded. "We're lucky to have him while we can. I've got a session with him at 11, she added casually. "Any idea where he is now?" I asked. "He should be out on the courts," she replied. "Apparently the person before me booked a 2-hour slot." She sighed. "I wish I had that kind of time. I'm just visiting for now, getting a feel for the place," I explained. "Would you mind showing me where the lessons are held? Only if it's not a bother." We stepped outside, and she began enthusiastically talking about the club, almost as though she was selling it. For a moment, I wondered if she got a commission for bringing in new members. On impulse, I asked to see her membership card and noted the number down. "That's strange," she remarked. "Edward's nowhere around." "He was here earlier with some woman dressed in white," she added, her tone revealing some curiosity. "Sounds like a nod to Wimbledon," I joked. "More like an attempt to scandalize it," she said with a grin. Her outfit left very little to the imagination. She's probably trying to show off or even seduce him. "Wonder where she found the time for a second hour," I said. I couldn't help but wonder what sort of lesson she might be receiving, perhaps something like goddess training. Or maybe it was more intimate, something personal with Edward. "Do you have indoor courts here?" I asked. "Oh yes," she said, "but no one wants to be inside on a day like this. Plus, there aren't enough coaches to cover both indoor and outdoor." I thanked her for the tour and made an excuse to walk off on my own. Soon, I found myself in front of the indoor courts. As I wandered down the hall, I overheard a familiar voice, Judy's, echoing from around the corner. "Same time next week, Eddie. I can't wait." Before they could turn the corner, I ducked into a nearby restroom, only to realize it was the women's. Then, I heard a man's voice, probably Edward's. "A whole week? That's way too long. You're the best partner I've had in years. Let's sneak in some private time here, Juju." "No chance," she responded. "You've got another client at 11. I'll call you later if I can." The door creaked open, and I froze. Judy stepped halfway inside, her lips still pressed to Edward's, their bodies tangled. Her head shielded me from his view, his eyes closed. Neither of them noticed me as I carefully backed into a stall and quietly closed the door behind me. "I really ought to work on your backhand," Edward murmured. "We need a rematch, preferably in an actual bed. Too bad you live so far." "Oh, you naughty thing," she whispered. "Your intentions couldn't be more obvious." "I'll see what I can do," he replied. Moments later, the door slammed shut behind him. Judy moved to the stall next to mine, her bag hitting the floor with a thud. I noticed a gap beneath the partition, and I crouched to peer under. She still had her tennis shoes on, but her legs were bare. I couldn't imagine how she was managing in those skimpy, tight-fitting undergarments. Had she stripped down in the doorway before I ducked in? I thought I remembered her wearing them when she came in. Maybe Edward had taken them as a keepsake. There was a brief silence, followed by the sound of determined wiping. She reached into her bag, pulled out a pack of wet wipes, and began cleaning up. She stood up and dropped a tiny white skirt to the floor. That's when everything became clear. Next, she produced what looked like a one-piece swimsuit, but it had fasteners down the middle and hung open, soaked and rather suggestive. Clearly, Edward had contributed more than just tennis coaching. Judy rummaged through her bag and pulled out a pair of plain underwear and a simple jogging suit. As she slipped on the bottoms and zipped off the excess, I noticed a set of clothes inside, a tight top and some daringly short shorts. Maybe they were just a backup in case anyone ever noticed. She slipped on a bra, then her t-shirt, and finally grabbed a plastic bag to stuff the soiled tennis gear inside. She tucked it beneath her rackets before leaving. On my way home, I reflected on everything I'd seen. Oddly enough, I didn't feel much of anything. In business, emotions can be liabilities. You learn early not to get too sentimental when things take unexpected turns. You always manage to find a way to set things right. You face obstacles, learn valuable lessons, and keep moving forward. There's a saying, business is business, not personal, and I believe that's true. However, when business becomes personal, the situation shifts entirely. I was completely blindsided when I discovered Judy was having an affair. I won't pretend it didn't sting. I was furious, honestly. Of all people, a tennis coach? It was almost as ridiculous as the classic story of the boss and his secretary. What really took me by surprise was how quickly things escalated between them. Just a few weeks, and they were already getting physical, calling each other by sweet nicknames. It was as if she couldn't resist him. He must have been so charming to her, and she probably thought, why not? But for him, this was probably just another day at work. But there was no way he was going to escape without facing the consequences. And part of me believed Judy was so eager because she knew he wouldn't stick around forever. Well, neither would she. He might not have the wealth I did, but he'd have some fame, and maybe that was what caught her attention. I don't enjoy the limelight, but perhaps Judy does. What truly frustrated me was how reckless she was. She scheduled a 2-hour lesson, spent the first hour on the courts where everyone could see them, and then disappeared for the second hour. How many other women at the club would start wondering where their favorite tennis coach went? I was nearly as angry at her for being so careless and getting caught as I was about her affair with Eddie. How could she have thought she wouldn't be discovered? She was going to regret making a fool out of me. So would he. I'd had enough of the emotions. They had to be controlled. When I walked in, she looked up and said, "Oh, you're home early." "How was your session?" I asked. Without missing a beat, she replied, "Great, thanks. He's the best coach I've ever had." "Are you getting faster, more accurate?" I asked. "Not really, but I'm getting stronger, and everything I do is improving," she responded. "Good job," I said, trying to remain composed. "By the way, I have to go to Birmingham on Thursday for a conference. I'll leave early and get back late Friday." "If Thursday's his day off, the afternoon would be perfect for you. And if he lives far, he can come here," I added casually. "Will it help your business?" she asked. "Not really," I said, "but it's great for networking. There'll be a lot of top companies there, so I'll stay overnight. You know how these business things go." I made sure to mention affair on purpose, just to gauge her reaction, but there was nothing. "It's not like a tennis lesson," I continued. "Nothing happens after the session ends, but in business, a lot can happen after the event is over." "Once, a major merger was signed in the bar after a conference," I went on. "They even signed the papers over breakfast the next morning. Anyway, I'll be back Friday afternoon, but if I've had a few drinks the night before, it might be later. You know how driving goes." "That's fine," she said. "I'll find something to do on Thursday night." "I'm sure you will," I replied. The next day, I called the club from work, using Petra's membership number to inquire about booking Edward for a private lesson on Thursday. The response I got was that he was fully booked in the morning and wasn't available in the afternoon. They might not have known what he would be doing, but I certainly did. I had a solid prenup in place, designed to protect my growing business, ensuring that Judy would receive nothing in the event of a divorce. Our house, cars, everything was owned by the business, so financially, I had nothing to worry about. I didn't need more proof. I wasn't looking to catch them in the act or take pictures. My goal was to embarrass her, to make her face the consequences of her actions. And as for him, I wanted him to feel the price of his betrayal. I was stunned that Judy would risk everything for a tennis coach. She had everything with me. A beautiful house, a Porsche Cayman GTS. Sure, she could keep the car, but could she really recreate the lifestyle she had with me with just a tennis instructor? He might make a good living in London, but he was still just a coach, not a famous player. Maybe he came from money, but I doubted he could offer her the same life she had with me. Out of curiosity, I even Googled the word juju, just to see if maybe Judy would go blonde. That Thursday, I pretended to leave for Birmingham, but instead, I went to work. After working for a couple of hours, I switched cars and drove back home, parking a few blocks away. She'd be free after 11. By noon, he was finishing up his last lesson for the day. I slipped into the house, made a few preparations, and noticed her laptop was open. Out of curiosity, I checked her recent browsing history. There was nothing about Edward or tennis, but one search stood out to me. Best places to live in London. That caught my attention. Judy lay on the bed, her eyes tracking every move he made as he undressed. His physique was unlike any she had ever encountered, and he had just told her he loved her. His skin, a perfect golden hue, shimmered under the light, with fine blonde hairs scattered across it, creating a radiant glow. The last piece of clothing he removed was his underwear, and as she looked closer, she noticed the absence of any tan lines. He must have been sunbathing in secret, or perhaps using a tanning bed, she thought. He was meticulously groomed, and it was clear his body was already responding, half prepared in eager anticipation. As their connection deepened, Judy felt an electric current pass between them. Suddenly, Edward paused and glanced around, a puzzled expression crossing his face. "What was that?" he muttered, pulling back. A tennis ball rolled from beneath the bed and headed toward the window. There was something disconcerting about it, as if it had moved on its own. "My God," Judy gasped, shoving him away and sitting up. "It's Colin. He knows." "Get out now," she urged, swinging her legs off the bed. Edward scrambled to his feet, panic written all over his face. The brass knob on the bed's headboard tapped softly against the wall, a lonely sound. "Finished, love? All good?" I asked, leaning casually against the door frame. "Colin!" Judy shouted. "Who the hell is that?" Edward asked, his eyes wide. I pulled a gun from my waistband and pointed it straight at his face. "Stand up." His golden skin, once glowing, now drained of color. "Stop covering yourself. Hands behind your head now," I commanded. As I lowered the gun, I followed him downstairs, nudging him out of the house and forcing him to open the front door. I had locked all other exits and entrances earlier. Judy had wisely stayed in the bedroom. With a slam, I shut the door behind me and returned upstairs, pausing briefly in Neil's old bedroom before heading back to mine. Judy was still sitting on the bed, completely exposed. I couldn't help but admire her calm demeanor. "That wasn't a real gun," she said, her voice steady. "Right," I replied. "I just tucked it back into Neil's old toy box, but it sure fooled Loverboy. Maybe he was distracted by other things." "I noticed you didn't tell him. I've never seen you so angry. I thought it was better not to say anything." "You scared me. That was a clever move." "Tell me something," I asked. "Were you blackmailed?" "No," she answered. "But there's something I need to explain." "Will explaining make you feel better?" I asked. "Yes," she said quietly. "Well, I'm not here to make you feel better. Hearing your reasons will probably upset me even more." "It's over, Judy. You're out," I said firmly. "But hey, I'll let you get dressed first." I glanced out the bedroom window. A police car had just arrived, and 2 officers were speaking with a barely dressed man holding a plastic bag in front of himself, likely scavenged from a nearby construction site. One of the officers pointed toward our house, and Edward shook his head before ducking into the car. The officers drove off. "You may not be thrilled about a divorce, but you're about to lose everything," I told her. "Funny," I added, half smiling. I noticed you were online looking for a place in London. Let me guess. You're eyeing Wimbledon if Edie can swing it? It's just curiosity, she murmured. I still love you. Love, huh? That's an interesting way to put it. Were you ever unfaithful? Was there anyone else during your short time together? The guy next door? The bartender? No, of course not, she snapped. So you were faithful to him but not to me? I raised an eyebrow. That's your version of love? I had always felt Judy rushed into this affair, but she continued to surprise me. At that moment, she severed all remaining ties to our marriage. She stood up suddenly. Okay, you win, she declared. I love him more. He's beautiful. File for the divorce. You'll get everything you want, but I'll get what I deserve. Someone richer, famous, who will offer me far more than you ever could. I couldn't hold back any longer. He'll need a lot to offer, I shouted. You've got some big needs to fill. It wasn't entirely true, but my anger took over. I'll pack my things then, shall I? She replied, her tone cold. Your things are already packed in the guest room, I responded. An hour later, I watched as she climbed into a taxi, the driver helping her with the bags. The word baggage seemed fitting. I was getting rid of mine. As the taxi drove off, I gazed back at the bed. I had once loved that bed, but maybe it was time for a new mattress, a new carpet. The house felt oddly quiet, but it didn't bother me. She had taken all of her belongings, and his clothes too. Edward spent the next week rearranging everything. By the end of it, the house looked as though no woman had ever lived there. A month later, an article in the paper caught my attention. The new coach for the Wimbledon Lawn Tennis Club would no longer be taking the position, due to an unfortunate incident in a nearby parking lot. He found himself trapped against a Porsche, with the door crashing onto his right arm in a violent blow. The force of the impact shattered the bone in 3 separate locations, and the medical team informed him that he would never play again. It was far more intense than something as simple as tennis elbow, or so it seemed to me. While he was restrained, his assailant took the opportunity to carve something into his other arm, a word that looked like JoJo. Meanwhile, the authorities were investigating the incident. As he lay there, his phone buzzed with a new message. I've completed your project on time. Game, set, and match. Thanks, Sven. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.